Hello, everyone. I'm Dean Kelley with the Georgia Transparency Coalition. Those of you that are joining us live on Facebook, thank you very much for joining us. And we're also going to be having this on YouTube. We're going to be covering some very important topics today about what's going on in Georgia. My guest today is Debbie Dooley, who everybody knows who Debbie Dooley is that's involved in politics at all. She is the MAGA Tea Party President, and she's been involved in many different organizations and for a long time, and she really understands what's going on in Georgia, and we want to get her perspective of recent events with the elections and how we move forward in Georgia with the issues that we have. Just so you'll know, right here in a wonderful location of Cyrus Restaurant here in Dalton. So great food. So if you ever have a trip to Dalton, and if you're out from Dalton, make a special trip down here. And this is a very special place.
It is.
And you need to come here and try it out. So thank you very much. So we'll get right to it. With all the events that have happened, Debbie, and the focus, mainly we're going to be talking about Georgia. What are your perspectives as far as what happened with this election?
I think the election was stolen. There's no doubt in my mind it was stolen. I think Donald Trump's the only candidate that he would have fought to the very end. I think all these other candidates would not have, Republicans would not have. I think it was definitely stolen. That's something, it indicates the real need that we need to change our election laws in Georgia. I don't know if you guys remember, anybody that receives my emails do, but in the March time frame, I basically declared war on Brad Raffensperger, the Georgia Secretary of State, because of the fact that he was sending out absentee ballot applications to 6.9 million registered voters, even though it was only during the primary. I warned people that he was caving to Nancy Pelosi, that he was becoming too friendly with a lot of the Democrat figures that wanted vote by mail. I warned what would happen. I brought out the fact that even though it was for the primary, if you were over 65, there was a check mark where you could say, automatically send me a ballot for the general election and for the runoff. I think that set the stage. It allowed the Democrats to fine-tune their fraud involving absentee ballots. And he was very arrogant. Jordan Fuchs is the Deputy Secretary of State. I was complaining about it on Facebook, where on his page where they were defending it, and she basically told me, "Get over yourself."
Wow.
And I think we have some major issues, and I think we need to pray very strongly that no one will infect the Georgia legislature to where they have to shut down like they did last year, and they're able to actually correct these election laws, to actually go through. One of the things that's got general consensus is to require ID.
Yeah.
When you have to have a copy of your ID to send in, either with your application or your ballot. If we have to have an ID when we go to the polls, the same thing should be applied to an absentee ballot. I've heard talk about people doing away with no excuse legislation, no excuse absentee ballot. Well, the bottom line is, I think that's good. I think it will be hard to enforce because, you can get a ballot and just say, hey, I'm going to be out of the county, and not really be out of the county on election day. I think the main thing, we're doing away with the drop boxes, rolling back the unconstitutional settlement that our Georgia Secretary of State agreed to with Stacey Abrams. That was signed off on by Georgia's Attorney General Chris Carr. That actually was a lot of the issues in Georgia in the election, because previously you didn't have these ballot drop boxes. You either had to mail it in. If you were disabled, you could have someone take it to the voter registration office, and the absentee ballot signature had to match what was on file. Now, they would give people, if it did not match exactly, they would call and contact them, have them come in and prove who they are. But under the settlement, it was, and it actually, Georgia law said that it had to be employees of the election board. Well, the settlement that our Secretary of State sold us down the river on actually said, well, if it doesn't match, then you know it can either match what's on file or the absentee ballot application itself, which was so ridiculous, because if you have somebody going around harvesting absentee ballots, they'll sign the application, so of course it's going to match. And the settlement also said that they could, if it didn't match the signature, that it would go to a committee of 3 that could be deputy registrars that are not employees, which these groups like ACLU and all these other groups, Fair Fight, Georgia, actually staff those with their volunteers, and of course they would say it's matched. I think our problems in Georgia that we had, and this is just my thoughts, okay, and what I believe from looking, I don't think the Dominion voting systems were as big of an issue, which they were an issue, as the absentee ballots. Right. I think the Republican Party, our candidates and Donald Trump lost because of these mail-in absentee ballots, that our Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, agreed to. And I think that's what cost Donald Trump the election. That's what cost Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue. Even though Bubba McDonald won PSC commissioner, he won the runoff.
Well, let me ask you about this with Raffensperger. I mean, our legislators are the ones who passed the laws and passed the election laws and all that. So how was Raffensperger able to make these agreements and it be, as I guess, signed off on by our Attorney General? But how was that able to happen and go around our legislator? I mean, couldn't that be contentious?
Oh, it was, and I heard David Ralston, Speaker Ralston, talk about it on a call-in show, and he said that the legislature were not told ahead of time that Raffensperger was going to do this. They didn't find out until after the fact. And I remember when Speaker Ralston took Raffensperger to task, and he really went after him pretty strongly. So, I mean, they did it. I mean, where was the authorization?
Right.
I mean, they violated the Georgia Constitution, and I have, and this is what's interesting about why people say, well, it's just going to be next to impossible. The Democrats are not going to go along with these changes. Funny thing happened with the Supreme Court, I guess it's been about 10 years ago. And I was asking a friend of mine, former Congressman Lynn Westmoreland, about it. We were talking about, the legislature and all that. And he said, the Supreme Court, Georgia was under the Voting Rights Act, Section 5, which said that you have to get pre-clearance from the Justice Department from any changes you make to voting law. But he said the Supreme Court threw that out and said it did not apply to Georgia, that Georgia was no longer under Section 5, so we don't have to get pre-clearance for any changes we make to election law. Now, there is no doubt in my mind whatsoever the Democrats, first thing they'll do as soon as Kemp signs, if Kemp signs it, we don't know what he'll do. Right. First thing that Democrats will do will go to federal court. My understanding is the folks that are writing this legislation, and there's different pieces of legislation, but the final version that different sides will agree on will have been vetted by election law attorneys that are looking at it and taking away different pieces that could be challenged, like a federal court judge may use to throw the law out. So they're kind of being proactive there and not giving the courts any excuse whatsoever to throw out the law. This is the most important thing we can do now, because if we don't change this, we will never elect another Republican.
Either that or we have to get a lot better at what the Democrats are doing.
Yes.
Vote harvesting and all that. Have you talked to many of the legislators down there at the Capitol who are aware of what's going on? Are they pushing for some legislation down there that's going to have some teeth in it? are they meeting some resistance from leadership in the GOP, or how's that?
No, I think, believe it or not, I think they're pretty united on this. I think that you're going to have competing versions because, the legislators want to say, oh, I introduced this or I introduced that, and it's an election year next year. But I think they'll come to consensus on it because the Republican legislators will have to be united. And I think that that's what you'll see because they know it's got to face a court challenge, and they know the Democrats. And the funny thing is, Republicans, some of the legislation that's come out, it doesn't seem like Republicans are in control, but they are in control of the legislature. I think leadership, I read somewhere where Speaker Ralston had appointed Barry Fleming to come together, and I think they are reaching out to different groups. And I can't remember on the Senate side who Jeff Duncan appointed, but I think they both have, they're trying to get consensus, and there has to be unity. And, and the bottom line is, this is something I'm concerned about, but let's put it like this, okay? These Republican legislators know if they don't make substantial changes, that they're probably going to lose their seats in 2022. So they, besides having fair elections and all this, they have interest in actually changing the election law.
Yeah. Well, where Raffensperger is concerned, what is the talk down there at the Capitol? Are there going to be some challenges to him next election? There's someone in mind who may be running for that seat. And what excuse or what reason does Raffensperger have for doing what he did in the first place? Because was he just trying to avoid a lawsuit, or is he just fell under the pressure from Stacey Abrams? Or
I think he was a coward. I can tell you what my strong beliefs is, and that's backed up. I've got have informants that have reached out to me that knows what's going on in the Secretary of State's office, and they've been giving me all kind of data. For instance, Jordan Fuchs, which was helped with Raffensperger's campaign, no experience. This is a woman that, when she was a teenager, she dabbled in witchcraft.
Oh, wow.
Okay, yeah, there was an article that backed that up. She dabbled, she said that they, used to have little seances and cast spells and things like that when she was like 15, 16 years old. He made her Deputy Secretary of State. And my understanding is that she is the one that's running the Georgia Secretary of State's office. It's Jordan Fuchs. It's not Brad. Brad's got all these businesses. He officially took a leave of absence on, but I'm hearing he's still, working those businesses. I think he was over his head. He doesn't know what's going on, and I think he delegated everything to Jordan. And back in March, this is the woman that told me, get over yourself. So essentially, I just screenshotted that and just posted it all over social media. That was the wrong thing to tell me. It's like that's like waving a red flag in front of a charging bull. Right. But I've also had an informant, and there was a story on the National File about it, where that phone call that Raffensperger's office recorded with Donald Trump when they were actually talking about a court settlement. That was talking about a settlement to settle one of the many lawsuits that they were engaged in. Well, Jordan happened to be if she had recorded the call in Georgia, there would be nothing wrong. There was something ethical. When you record a call, you're not supposed to record a call when you're discussing a settlement to a lawsuit. Right. And record the President of the United States. That's major problems. If she had done it in Georgia, it would have been lawful. Mm-hmm. But my sources, which my source is 100% reliable, told me that she was actually in Florida visiting her grandmother in the Orlando area when she recorded the call, and that was in violation of the Florida about recording according to Florida law, every person on the call has to give their approval. And I mean, Jordan even had posted a ticket, the fact, hey, this is my ticket, I'm on this Delta flight. She had posted on social media. And my informant knew she would delete it, so they actually made a screenshot of it and sent it to me and said, hey, let's talk. And she did. She could be in major trouble, but I think part of Raffensperger's problem was that he was over his head. Mm-hmm. He didn't know what he was doing, and he turned this over to somebody that was just really not a fan of Donald Trump, turned it over to somebody whose ambition was to be chief of staff to Governor Brad Raffensperger one day. So she was playing footsies with the Democrats. I know the legislators mad. I've actually had folks approach me that are part of, some of the power structure, and they're telling me, they're saying, and they're on Brian Kemp's team. And so they've come to me and said, look, we need to work together. We're with you. We think that Duncan and Raffensperger, they need to go. But, we need to keep Governor Kemp, because we have to keep the governor's mansion. We don't want the Democrats to keep the governor's mansion, so we don't need to have a divisive primary. And I said, well, I'm glad you're with me with Secretary of State and Lieutenant Governor. I said, but if you're really concerned about keeping the governor's mansion, you need to tell Brian Kemp to step down, because I know a ton of Republicans that will not vote for him under any circumstances. And if Republicans are serious and they want to keep that governor's mansion, they need to encourage Brian Kemp not to run, because I can assure you he will not win it.
Well, let's talk about our governor, lieutenant governor. I know our lieutenant governor removed some chairmanships for some folks as a result. You want to go into detail on that, about how long that worked?
He removed, I think it was Brett, there was 3, and I can just remember Burt Jones, Brandon Beach, and there was one other that he removed to punish them for contradicting him and holding the Senate hearings and all that. Senator William Lyden was actually, he kind of headed up a lot of that, but he got so sick with the swamp under the Gold Dome that, and the unethical behavior that he's seen, he decided not to seek re-election. So he ceased to become a senator, or he would have been one of the first ones removed. Jeff Duncan is on a power trip. Jeff Duncan has clearly attacked not only Donald Trump, he's attacked Trump supporters. Just from the beginning, he loves going on liberal media like CNN and MSNBC, just like Gabe Sterling with the Secretary of State's office and Raffensperger does, and just throw Donald Trump under the bus. Funny thing is about Jeff Duncan, and I don't know if many of you remember in 2018, he upset David Schaefer at the time. And he had an influx of money coming in, and all of a sudden he was flush with cash. Well, his main financial backer during that time actually is not a big fan of Donald Trump, very close and tight with the Bush family, especially Jeb Bush. And in fact, Jeb Bush sits on the board of directors of his healthcare company. And I still think he's pulling Jeff Duncan's strings. I think that somebody's behind that. To be honest, I don't think Jeff Duncan has ever been the brightest bulb on the tree, but he's easily manipulated. But I think he's doing that. I think the bottom line is, come on, Brian Kemp, he should have called a special session.
Yeah.
There's 2 different times Brian Kemp betrayed Trump. Once, when he appointed Kelly Loeffler instead of Doug Collins, that was a colossal mistake that cost the Senate seat at that time. And then with these things, when President Trump was like, hey, can't you do what these other governors are doing? Can you hold a special session, hold hearings, and things like that? And Brian Kemp said, nope, he's not doing it, and he kind of trashed Donald Trump when he said that. You don't do that. It's like, Donald Trump is a powerful man, and he's not used to be told no. And that second time he did that, it kind of reminded me of that scene in The Godfather. I don't know where the guy went out to California with that movie producer Tom Hagen did,
Yeah.
and he asked the movie producer to hire I think it's Johnny something, the singer for his movie, and he said no, but tell your boss to ask me anything else. And Tom Hagen says to them, he says, yeah, if he's refused once, he don't ask twice, kind of. That's what he said. Twice. What did Brian Kemp expect? Donald Trump is the reason Brian Kemp is governor.
Right.
Okay? And Donald Trump knows he's the reason Brian Kemp's governor. And he made him look, both times he said, no, I'm not going to do this. And I'm hearing Brian Kemp, Donald Trump and his associates have made it absolutely clear. Brian Kemp is his top target. And I would hate to be on Donald Trump's enemies list as number one, because it's not, Donald Trump commands all of the grassroots Republicans. People were talking about a third party, and Donald Trump was smart. When all these, he knows what to do. The Art of the Deal, read that book. When Mitch McConnell was betraying him, throwing him under the bus, and some of the senators was, first thing Donald Trump did, I think we should just start a Patriot Party and have another political party. And I don't think he was ever serious, but I think he did it as a tool to say, okay, you want to play this game, let's play. And I think that's why he brought that up. And then, of course, Mitch McConnell, and all of a sudden the Republican senators, said, no, we don't really want to convict Trump. Rand Paul actually did, there was very telling yesterday when Rand Paul brought up an official objection to trying President Trump once he had already left office. And that vote was important because it will tell how many, Republican senators are willing to vote to convict President Trump. They needed 17. And there were 5 that voted voted with Democrats. Mitch McConnell, after saying all this stuff, throwing Trump under the bus, I guess he realized, I really don't want to make an enemy of him. And so he voted along with Rand Paul and other Republicans. So there is virtually no way the Senate will vote to convict Donald Trump now.
DOA.
It's DOA. And I can't remember who the Democrat senator was. He basically said there's no way we're going to convict him. It's a waste of time. It needs to be just a speedy trial and get it over with so we can go on to other stuff.
Well, what's the political motivation behind that anyway? Do they want to prevent him from running again in the future?
Bingo.
Is that the main political reason?
They want to prevent him from running again in the future. That's what Mitch McConnell, that's why he threw him under the bus until he saw the power of Trump and the power of Trump supporters. And, it moved them. I've always said there's 2 things that will get a politician's attention that's in the DC's one: money or anger. Yeah. And there was a tremendous amount of anger out there. I know that there's going to be primary, I can't say names, but Kemp's going to have primary opposition. I know Donald Trump's trying to encourage Doug Collins to run for governor against Kemp, but Doug's also looking at the Senate seat too, which Trump will support Doug for Senate. And people ask, why did Doug Collins not be forefront and help Lynn Wood and all these people in the vote steal? He did at the beginning, but I can tell you he was doing what Donald Trump and Donald Trump Jr. asked him to. That's the only reason he was out on the campaign trails, because folks on Team Trump asked him to go out and help Kelly Loeffler. He's very loyal to Trump, so. And if something happens that the Senate, I've heard multiple names mentioned, I can tell you, I actually talked to a few people, but I've heard yesterday somebody was saying, hey, look for Senator David Perdue. If Doug doesn't run for the Senate, there's a chance that David Perdue will actually run and, run for Senate to be against Warnock. So it's going to be interesting dynamics, and I can tell you the Secretary of State's race is going to be a free fall. I've heard multiple names. I'm hearing, I've had somebody approach me, and Public Service Commissioner Tim Eccles is going to have primary opposition too. So I'm hearing from all these people, but the bottom line is, if the Republicans want to keep the governor's mansion, they need to encourage Brian Kemp to step down. Because I warned people, Kelly Loeffler would not win, because I knew, she did not connect. I told people, I said, you can't count on voting for the lesser of the evil. The electorate, the Republican electorate is in no mood to vote for the lesser of the evil. And I said, she's not going to win. Well, she didn't win. Unfortunately, David Perdue did not either, but I think she kind of dragged David down a little bit. But look at Bubba McDonald. Bubba McDonald won re-election as PSC commissioner, a guy that was the first statewide elected official in Georgia to endorse Trump in 2016. Yeah. Bubba got more votes than David Perdue. It was the amount of votes that was Bubba on the Republican side. Bubba was first, David Perdue, then Kelley was third.
Well, as we move forward, and we like you mentioned earlier, talking about the Dominion voting machines versus the mail-in ballots, something has to be done about these mail-in ballots, because if they're not, a lot of Trump people that think like Donald Trump are just going to stay home and not vote.
Exactly.
And we already know that the demographics in Georgia are changing anyway. Drastically, where minorities there won't be any majorities. I think Caucasians will be what they call majority minority, less than 50% of the population in just a few years. So that's changing the dynamics in Georgia also. But you're going to have a lot of these conservative Tea Party Trump supporters that are just going to stay home and not vote. So they have to do something about this issue.
Well, I don't think there's any way. They will scrutinize the Dominion voting machines, but they're not going to take all the Dominion voting machines out. They're not going to do that, but they will. As I said, the Republicans in the legislature have an incentive to do it because their political careers are at stake about the absentee ballots. Do you think Republicans, after being in control of the legislature for, over 10, 15 years or 20 years, you think they want to go back to being in the minority? No.
And they'll lose the chairmanships of all these committees and all that too. But if I remember, you may know the numbers, I mean, I don't, but as I remember, I believe Donald Trump actually won, talking about the Dominion voting machines, I think he actually won the election on just those. It was the mail-in ballots
that was it.
The election. And so, like I said, all the attention on the voting machines, even though there's probably some fraud that went involved there, that's not the elephant in the room. The elephant in the room is the mail-in ballots that our Secretary of State helped set up and help make it happen.
That's in Georgia now. Some of the other states, you may have had a lot of issues with the Dominion voting machines. Now, people are saying, hey, I'm walking away from the party. That's the wrong attitude. Donald Trump has made it clear he wants to fight, take over, control the Republican Party. He said no to a third party. And he wants to do that. I encourage everyone in Georgia this year. We have the Georgia Republican Party is going through and electing new leadership this year. And I encourage everyone to get involved. I'm encouraging all the new people, get involved, show up. It starts. If you're in a county that's over 80,000, your mass precinct in your county, the precinct organization, is on March 20th. If you're in under 80,000, it's April 17th. And basically, you go to the mass meetings. You do not have to be a member of the local Republican Party. You do not have to pay anything to attend the actual mass meeting. And you attend the mass meeting. That's where you elect precinct captains and you elect delegates to the county convention. The county conventions are going to be April 17th. And what will happen at the county conventions, you will elect officers to lead the party, and you will elect delegates and alternates to the congressional district convention and to the state convention. At the county convention, you also get to vote on rules to govern the party and resolutions. And this is a thing that we can send a strong message that Georgia is Trump country, the Georgia GOP is controlled by Trump supporters. We elect Trump leaders, pro-Trump leaders, and we pass resolutions at the county convention, and I would also like to see them passed on to the district and state, that actually does what Republicans in Arizona and Michigan did to those folks that are never Trump, is pass resolutions censoring Kemp, Duncan, and Raffensperger for betraying Trump.
Yeah.
And we can pass those resolutions, and that will send a message, and we'll get a lot of press. It will send shockwaves, and it will send a message to those three folks that, hey, you need to watch out because we're coming for you, step down. I'm encouraging people to email me if you have any questions. It's Debbie, D-E-B-B, at mainstreetpatriots.us. Maine, MAINSTREETPATRIOTS.us. We'll partner you up with a mentor if this is your first time, so you'll know what to do. But we need to make sure, because I can assure you the establishment elitists are coming. They want to take control of the party. So if you're a Trump supporter and you're fed up with the way Republicans treated Trump, help us. Come to the mass meetings and get involved. We'll walk you through every step of the way. We'll guide you. We'll partner you up in the counties with a mentor so they can guide you and tell you what to do.
And that's one of the most important things you can do is get involved in the your local GOP. That's where you can have the most impact in your local community. While I'm thinking about it, please look at our Georgia Transparency Facebook page, take a like, or even join our organization where we keep you informed on a lot of things that are going on. Ed, you got any questions?
Well, I was just going to point out something Debbie said. Trump won the absentee ballots, or the vote early ballots on the machine by about 161,000
Yes.
approximately. He won the election day votes by 220,000. He lost the absentee ballots by 398,000. So the people that are trying to get us focused on the Dominion machines are just holding up the shine of the auction.
Right.
Trump won those easily. And if we don't do something about the absentee ballots, as you said, that is the key. I just want to give the numbers because it's astounding when you look at the numbers.
Oh, I totally agree, and I've looked at it and I followed, and I tried to raise red flags in March. I'm saying you can't do this, and but we're fighting. You don't. This is just this 2020 election was just a skirmish that we had, and we may have lost that skirmish, but I fully believe that we will win the war. Imagine Trump running in 2024, and with a lot more friendly House, with get rid of some of these never Trumpers in the U.S. House and U.S. Senate, and consolidate control of the party. It lets us see who really supports us and who our real enemies are.
Right.
I mean, we know it's there. We know who's really with us. We know who are fair weather friends, and this is something. That's why we have to stay involved. And you're right. I mean, to me, in Georgia, the Dominion voting machines, that's just a red herring. Our focus should be, number one, we need to move forward. We don't need to keep focused. And we know that the Democrats cheated and all that. We definitely do. But we need to focus on preventing it again. We need to keep raising awareness, and we need to fix the problem so the Democrats can't cheat with absentee ballots again in Georgia. And that's vital that we do that. Let's focus. That's caused the election in Georgia is the absentee ballots. And
Absolutely.
I'm confident in that.
Well, you know, with the how much early voting we have what, 2 weeks of early voting, 3 weeks of early voting, and then, like I said, to me, if you're going to vote mail-in ballot, the standard should be higher, not lower. And right now, the standard is lower. I mean, that just seems insane to me. But anyhow, let's talk about President Trump for a minute. You know, what can you share with us? I know you're in communication with him and his group. What is he going to plan on doing moving forward? What is he really focusing on? What you've shared with us.
Well, I'm not in communication with him, but
His people.
you know, some of his, one or two of his campaign, folks. But, I think he's setting up. I mean, he made it clear. He made it absolutely clear. And, that he was setting up that office, the office of the former president in Palm Beach. He's going to be very active. He's still going to push the America First agenda. I told somebody, I said, look, hey, he's going to be more powerful than you can possibly imagine. And then he's going to turn around, and I think either he or his son, Don Jr., will actually run again. Now, I'm hearing Ivanka, word is that I've seen in the press in Florida is that Ivanka is thinking about running against Marco Rubio.
Wow.
In Florida, that she's seriously considering that. I did a survey, an informal poll on Twitter. If Donald Trump doesn't run, which Trump child would you like to see? And it was like Don Jr. was like 70%. I mean, everybody wanted him, but anybody that thinks Donald Trump is just going to go away, they're delusional. I mean, to me, I've always told people, I said, he's not going away. He'll just set up a shadow White House in
like
Florida, like Obama did in Florida. And lo and behold, like 2 weeks later, he puts out this, office of the former president. And I laughed at the way that the left just carried on Twitter. And I haven't been blocked on Twitter yet. But I'm definitely encouraged folks to, like even with Facebook. I was in Facebook jail for 3 weeks for something, just being an admin of one of the groups that I was just put as an admin, one of the big conservative groups that was deleted. But we need to move to like MeWe.
Yeah.
It's ME, that's the alternative to Facebook. I'm on Gab, G-A-B, and Parler. And what's interesting, there's a new app that you can install on your cell phone. It's like a text messaging, but it's like a message board. It's actually called Telegram. And Donald Trump Jr., Donald Trump, they're on that. We have groups. We have a Georgia MAGA group that's on there. And there's a lot of groups, and that's the way a lot of people I've seen actually communicating and strategizing and stuff like that. It's actually called Telegram, and it's really neat. And that's something that I've seen, all these big groups. You can actually create a group on Telegram. And I've seen that Donald Trump Jr. is exceptionally active on Telegram, and I've seen Donald Trump, he has a real account. There's 2 accounts, and one of them will have, I think it says fraud or scam on it that's not the real one, and so you'll know the other one is Donald Trump. And I think they're in war mode. I mean, you can see he's not going away. I think it really, imagine, all these people, we're on your side for 4 years. And then when he really needed them, they throw him under the bus.
Absolutely.
And I think that's horrible, and I think it was eye-opening for him. I mean, his administration, and I cringed. I cringed when Reince Priebus was going to be his chief of staff, because I said, oh no, because I saw what happened under Reagan's administration, where the Bush people filled all the vacancies in the White House and they would undermine him, and I saw that happening, and that did. He bought in. Why on earth did Mike Pence bring in somebody from Koch brothers, Mark Short, in the White House that was, not in line with the American First agenda. And I think a lot of things will not be repeated in the second Trump administration. I think he's angry right now, and I think all his folks are angry right now, and I think they're ready for a political war.
Yeah, that's coming. Well, speaking of that, also we got redistricting this year. We got our congressional districts going to be drawn. Your local districts in your own community with your state senators and your legislators are going to be drawn. That's another reason you'll want to get involved in your local GOP. And even though our legislators do draw those districts, we've had an input in the past. Ed, Naomi, and others. We had a great impact in how the 14th district was drawn. So we need to look at that again and put those efforts forward. Well, before we shut down, what are any closing thoughts? You've been going a mile a minute. You got a lot of information.
I do. It's because I always like coming to Dalton. I don't get every time except one time, and that was Lafayette for a Christmas party, and I was exposed to COVID then. But I always love Dalton coming up here in North Georgia, and I'm just saying, hey, the fight's just beginning. We have just begun to fight. I can promise we need for you to help us in the Republican Party. We need people that can vote for leadership in the Republican Party that is actually pro-Trump. We need you to help us pass these resolutions. And this Georgia Transparency, they're great, phenomenal group. Get involved with them. Help us. I promise we're going to win this battle. In the end, we're going to win.
Go to Georgia Transparency, click on our Facebook page, become a member, and let's help fight back and keep the battle going. Thank you so much. Debbie, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, let's have some dinner.
Okay.